Christmas dinner, sobbing uncontrollably as he stared at his phone. He pointed a shaking finger at me and screamed, "You owe me $15 million. You stole my future." My mother slammed her wine glass down, her face twisted in rage, screeching that I was a selfish monster for ruining her golden boy's life. But here's the catch. They didn't even know I owned a $25 million company until 5 minutes prior. For years, I was the invisible daughter, working 80 hours a week in silence while my parents paid Nathan's rent, bought him a mansion, and constantly cleared his massive debts. They thought I was just a broke corporate assistant. But when the truth exploded at dinner, their greed completely exposed them. Follow my story until the end to see how I quietly turned their own trap against them. My name is Vanessa, and I am 27 years old. In my family, there was a single, unspoken rule that dictated every single sacrifice. The son gets everything. You could see the exact dynamic of my upbringing reflected in every single family gathering we ever had, where the division between us couldn't be clearer. My brother, Nathan, was the undisputed golden child. From the moment he turned 18, my parents treated his existence like a full-time charitable cause. They paid his luxury apartment rent, bought him a stunning 4-bedroom house, and continuously stepped in to erase his massive credit card debts without a single question. Meanwhile, I was treated like an absolute ghost. If I struggled to pay for groceries or textbooks, my mother would coldly remind me that a woman needs to learn independence. I accepted the rejection and used it as fuel. While pretending to just scrape by as a broke corporate assistant to keep them off my back, I spent my nights in a cramped, dark apartment building something entirely my own. I worked 80 hours a week, surviving on black coffee and sheer determination, creating a tech logistics platform from scratch. I let them believe I was failing because it was the only way to keep their greed away from my hard work. Little did they know, the quiet ghost they ignored was about to build an absolute empire right under their noses. Building a tech logistics firm from the ground up completely on my own required an unimaginable amount of sacrifice. For 3 long years, my life was a blur of endless coding, client pitches, and sleepless nights. But the hardest part wasn't the exhausting workload. It was the exhausting act of maintaining my cover. I knew that the very second my parents or Nathan caught wind of any financial success, they would descend on me like vultures, demanding I hand it over to fund Nathan's failing business ventures. So I chose to live like a complete secret. While my company's revenue began to double every single quarter, I deliberately kept driving my beat-up old sedan with a dented bumper. I wore cheap, faded clothes to family dinners, and I constantly complained about the rising cost of utilities just to blend in. My parents would smirk, exchanging knowing looks that silently validated their belief that I was a failure compared to their golden boy. But behind that carefully constructed illusion of a struggling corporate assistant, the reality was staggering. My platform had quietly revolutionized local supply chains, attracting major venture capital backing. By the time I turned 27, a private valuation certified that my company was worth a jaw-dropping $25 million. I was officially a multimillionaire, completely independent, and holding a secret that was about to blow my entitled family's entire world apart. The trap was set on Christmas Eve when I walked into my parents' lavishly decorated dining room. The air was thick with the scent of pine, roasted turkey, and unearned arrogance. As we sat down at the mahogany table, the grandstanding began almost immediately. My mother spent the first 20 minutes loudly bragging to the extended family about Nathan's incredible business potential, conveniently forgetting to mention that his latest lifestyle brand was entirely funded by their retirement savings. Nathan sat there soaking in the praise, smirking across the table at me. Then, right on cue, the passive-aggressive knives came out. My father looked at me, shook his head with sighing pity, and asked if my little assistant job was at least paying enough for me to afford a decent haircut this year. Nathan chuckled, loudly adding that if I ever needed a real loan, I should just ask him, assuming he felt generous. I simply smiled, took a slow sip of my water, and watched the digital clock on the wall tick toward exactly 7:30 p.m. I knew that at that very minute, the embargo on a massive business press release was lifting online. A prominent national tech journal was publishing an exclusive profile on the anonymous founder who had just consolidated the regional logistics market. I kept my eyes locked on Nathan's phone, which was sitting right next to his wine glass, waiting for the inevitable digital explosion to shatter their smug reality. The digital explosion didn't take long to arrive. Right as my mother was passing the gravy boat, Nathan's phone buzzed aggressively with a high-priority Google alert notification. He glanced down carelessly, expecting another casual social media like, but his entire posture went rigid instantly. His eyes widened, scanning the screen as the color drained completely from his face. The notification was a breaking business feature from the Silicon Review, titled, "The anonymous 27-year-old woman behind the $25 million logistics empire revealed." And right beneath that headline was a massive, high-definition corporate headshot of me, smiling confidently in a tailored blazer. Nathan choked on his wine, letting out a horrific coughing fit that brought the entire dinner conversation to a grinding halt. "Nathan, honey, what is it?" my mother asked, her voice instantly laced with panic. Nathan couldn't even speak. He just pointed his shaking hand at the screen and slid the phone across the mahogany table toward my father. My father squinted, adjusted his reading glasses, and began reading the article aloud in a trembling, disbelieving whisper. When he reached the part detailing my absolute ownership and the verified $25 million valuation, the room went completely dead silent. My mother's jaw dropped so low it looked unhinged, her eyes darting between the phone and me as if she were looking at a complete stranger. The smug superiority that had filled the room just seconds ago evaporated, replaced by a thick, suffocating wave of shock. I calmly set my fork down, wiped my mouth with a napkin, and smiled. The illusion was gone. The silence didn't last long before Nathan completely lost his mind. He pushed his chair back so violently it toppled over, crashing against the hardwood floor. He dropped to his knees right there in the middle of Christmas dinner, sobbing uncontrollably as he clutched his phone. He pointed a shaking, accusatory finger at me and screamed, "You owe me $15 million. You stole my future." My mother snapped out of her shock, her face twisting into a mask of pure rage as she slammed her wine glass down, shattering the stem. She lunged across the table, screeching that I was a deceitful, selfish monster for hiding my success while my poor brother was struggling to keep his business afloat. "How could you do this to your own blood, Vanessa?" my father thundered, his voice booming through the room. "In this family, we support each other. The sun represents our legacy, and you built a multi-million-dollar empire on our time while pretending to be broke. You owe your brother his." They didn't care about the years I spent grinding in the dark or the fact that they had ignored me my entire life. To them, my hard work was community property, and Nathan was the rightful owner of the majority of it. Nathan stayed on the floor, weeping dramatically, repeating that $15 million was the bare minimum he needed to clear his debts and scale his lifestyle brand. My mother stood over me, veins popping in her neck, delivering the ultimate ultimatum. "You will sign over $15 million to your brother by the end of this week, or you are completely dead to this family. We will strip you of your name. We will tell everyone what a parasite you are, and you will never set foot in this house again." Instead of screaming back or defending my hard work, I forced myself to remain perfectly calm. I looked down at Nathan, who was still weeping on the floor, and then up at my mother's enraged face. I let a fake tremor creep into my voice, looking down at my hands as if their vicious threats had genuinely intimidated me. I didn't realize you all felt so strongly about this," I stammered, deliberately playing along with their toxic sense of entitlement. My father's expression instantly shifted from fury to smug triumph, believing his booming ultimatum had successfully broken my spirit. My mother smoothed down her dress, a cold, satisfied smile spreading across her lips as she signaled Nathan to get up from the floor. Nathan eagerly scrambled back into his chair, wiping his tears away as his eyes lit up with pure, unadulterated greed. "That's right, Vanessa," my mother said patronizingly, reaching into her purse and pulling out a blank legal notepad. "Family comes first, and you're finally doing the right thing for your brother." They immediately began dictating terms, demanding I contact my corporate legal team first thing Monday morning to draft a binding fund transfer. I nodded quietly, taking detailed notes on their exact financial demands, pretending to agree to every single condition. They completely fell for the act, celebrating their massive victory over their dinner plates, totally oblivious to the fact that they were walking straight into a legal steel trap. The next morning, I didn't call my legal team to transfer $15 million. Instead, I blocked my parents' and Nathan's phone numbers across every single platform and instructed my company's security and corporate attorneys to issue formal cease and desist orders. They had absolutely no legal leverage, no claim to my intellectual property, and zero right to a single cent of my hard-earned $25 million company. By trying to bully the daughter they had spent a lifetime ignoring, they completely exposed their own toxic greed and effectively cut themselves out of my life forever. I left them to drown in the mountain of debt they had accumulated trying to fund Nathan's failed, entitled lifestyle entirely on their own. Today, my business continues to scale globally, and I am finally living a life of peace and true independence, completely free from their emotional manipulation. Now, I'm incredibly curious about all of you who have listened to my story today. What would you have done if you found yourself in my exact position at that holiday dinner? Would you have played along? Your thoughts below. And check out the other stories on your screen.